Okay, so hi, I'm Lisa Kastner, and this is Reuben Tihi Hayslett, and we are here for the very first Storytellers Happy Hour. And I am more than thrilled to invite you into our living rooms to hear some amazing stories that are completely off the cuff. Our special guests here are Tone Milazzo, who's the author of The Faith Machine and Picking Up the Ghost. And he just barely got his new computer together in time to join us. He literally installed Zoom 1 minute before we started. So that's kind of impressive. We also have Taylor Grant, who is a two-time Bram Stoker Award Finalist, veteran screenwriter, comic book writer, and currently leads the film and TV division of WEBTOON Entertainment, the largest digital comics publisher in the world. And he is enjoying a Corona, for those of you who weren't quite paying attention. Oh, and Tone has the world's biggest bottle of rum. So we'll see if he gets through the entire bottle. He's already through 3/4 of it. So,
well, I mean, that wasn't today, to be fair.
So you say. I think you're an unreliable narrator. Excellent.
And then we round our guests out with Jonathan Maberry, who's the New York Times bestselling author, 5-time Bram Stoker Award winner, comic book writer, and executive producer. And I'm Lisa Kastner. I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild Press. I'm also an author myself. I love to tell stories, and we're all here basically to tell a lot of bullshit. So with that, to set the stage, so before we started this, Reuben basically did a white elephant and gave us all prompts. So we selected our prompts. We will all have 5 to 8 minutes to tell our story, and then we'll move on to the next person. So with that, I will hand this off to Tihi.
Yay! Hey, I'm super excited for all of this. So yes, we had a big bowl of prompts that we all randomly chose from. By all, I mean I did this because it's a pandemic. So we all know the content of our stories, but you, the audience, don't know these yet. And we're going to start in a certain order because that's the order we all chose randomly for. So the first person up is Tone, who is, let me find the prompt here. Of course, it was the last one that I picked up. The prompt, if you can see, is concert or festival for Tone. And I guess I can also start a clock, but I feel like we can also go by the honor system of 5 to 8 minutes. All right.
There's no danger of me going overtime.
Awesome. All right. Your
right.
time starts now.
Boom. All right. So let's go back to the magical time of the summer of '88. It was my first Ren Fair, and the first Ren Fair where I stayed overnight. I don't remember the facility. It was someplace up in the East County. It was actually a place that had water, so there was grass that was green and stuff, which is pretty rare for Southern California. And it was a big circular facility around a very, very small lake, probably more of a pond. And I was there with my friend Matt, who Matt was very, very much at that time, he was at the Ren Fair because very into his Scottish heritage, which was like 1/4 of his ancestry. I forget what clan he claimed to be because it wasn't, of course, his last name, but I do remember that his clan's motto was never unprepared. So the usual stuff at a Ren Fair, the kind of stuff as a teenager you kind of, especially a geeky teenager, you get into. The Shakespearean-ish talking, the giant turkey legs, the crafts, etc. The kind of stuff that can fool you into thinking you want to make it your lifestyle. So we're there with our friends and stuff from the what was called this Medieval Mayhem Society, which was an early LARPing thing, the fantasy LARP with the Botho swords and stuff. And we're having fun all day. And then night times comes around, and I still get like this, where there'll be a time where I just don't want to be away from people. And it was especially true at this time because there was a guy there who commanded an audience by reciting Monty Python's The Holy Grail from memory, the entire movie.
Wow.
And I had to get out of there. So I wound up walking up through the hills And I had some sort of epiphany. It was almost like what I hear about people's trips on shrooms. I thought for sure I had it like the entire cosmos and everything figured out. No drugs were involved. It was just trying to get away from the Monty Python. But I return back to base and I find Matt and I say, okay, it's time for us to go to bed. We had not put up our tent. And this is a campground. So it is, and it's not no moon at all. It is pitch black. And we're trying to figure out how to put up a tent in total darkness. Not working. Eventually, I had the, so when the lights went down, one of the camps, it was like a bunch of different camps. One of the other camps there was some sort of gypsy belly dance society. And they were like crickets, right? When the lights went down, their candles came up and you started hearing the, whatever those clapper things are just going on. So I went down there and they were gracious enough to lend me a candle. So we were able to get our tent up, but you know, even though we got light, my hands are numb from the cold and everything. And we are finally getting to bed. And Matt, of course, never unprepared, just like on our tent experience, had forgot his sleeping bag. So he is just using the clothes that he was planning on wearing tomorrow as his blanket. And just before I went to bed, he was shivering and saying, "I'm so cold." And I said, "Good."
Cool.
And
Did he
that's the story.
survive?
He did survive, yeah, unfortunately.
Did he wear the same clothes the next day? The clothes he slept in?
No, he was using next day's outfit as a blanket.
Okay. Wow.
Makes sense.
Didn't hang out with the belly dancers? Like, why
Yeah,
not?
that's
We-
what I would have done,
You know, if we
I
were
would.
more confident, maybe that, and had better ideas, that maybe we should have done that.
And more rum.
Did you return the candle? That's what we're all dying to know.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So not going to the belly dance camp is like the worst Penthouse Forum letter ever.
I was so pissed off at that point by the Monty Python and the darkness and everything that, you know, yeah. And I also, quite frankly, was not the most confident period of my life. So yeah, I thought it hadn't occurred to me.
All right. Fair.
Oh,
All right, Tihi, what are you doing? Are you like?
I'm grabbing more Trulies because I ran out while drinking and listening to the first story, which I've never been to a Ren Fair, and I think I would love it.
I think you would.
I think I would
It's a very
speak to Thraki the entire time.
that is something that people used to do. They used to show up at Ren Fairs in Star Trek uniforms.
Really?
Yeah, and pretend to be like time travelers. You know, one of the time travel episodes. They go there with tricorders and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, now I want to go.
That's next level nerdism.
Yeah, it was meta nerdism at that point. That joke is so old that some Ren Fairs put a ban on Star Trek uniforms.
Really interesting.
It's hard out there for a Trekkie.
It is.
I want to Google
Good.
what these are. I'm going
Yeah.
crazy.
Finger symbols.
Canestas?
Yeah,
Yeah, basically
yeah.
finger symbols. There's a name for it, but yeah.
I thought of that
That's right.
character from Futurama, like
Oh, Zoidberg?
yeah, Zoidberg.
And the green lady from Star Trek.
Yes.
Mhm.
Bringing it back to the Trek. Everything comes back to Star Trek eventually. So, on this note, maybe it's Star Trek related. Taylor is actually our next storyteller, and his prompt is bad first date. And I'm about to start the clock. I'm super excited to hear this. And Taylor, your time starts now.
Okay. Well, this is not embellished. It is a true story. We're going to go back to approximately 87 to 89-ish. I was in the full, I believe, Miami Vice regalia. Was convinced that I was Don Johnson, although I wasn't remotely Don Johnson. And so we went out, and I actually had, now this is the interesting part is that I had a date already, which dovetails into the story, but that date was so unbelievably boring that Zero recollection of it.
I may have dated her sister at some point.
She's like literally a blank face. And I left early. I excused myself from the date, you know, and it was still so early. I mean, it was probably like 8 or something.
Wow.
I went back out again. And so I was out at a club in Scottsdale, Arizona. And so there was this, and it was like a weeknight. So there wasn't a lot of people there. And there was this girl who we will call Jane Doe. And Jane was a very, very, very sexy dancer. And she was dancing by herself. And so there was lots of, you know, looking back and forth at each other and, you know, tipping the beer and the whole thing. And so she came to me, which is interesting.
Because you're Don Johnson.
I was Don Johnson. That's exactly right. The Miami Vice look worked. Or she took pity on me, one of the two. So she comes over, we start talking, and then we start dancing. And we danced a lot. And she was a very, an erotic dancer, we'll say. And so we danced for a couple hours, and then she asked me to take her home. So I drive her home. She doesn't have a car, which was odd because I don't know how she got there. This is long before.
Red flag.
Yeah. Long before Uber. And so I give her a ride home, and she asked me if I want to come in. And she was very attractive, but there was just some little voice. It was like, I don't know, maybe take a rain check. So I did. I was a gentleman, and so we were saying our goodbyes, and she said, "Hey, look, I'm gonna go look to buy a car this weekend. Would you come with me?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay. She said, well, I don't want to be taken advantage of by a dealership, because if a guy's with me, that they'll I'll get more respect or whatever. I said, okay, I've known you all of 3 hours, but okay, sure. So, and I didn't think about it again. Well, so that was kind of a half date, right? Mm-hmm. So what I forgot was that I had agreed to take her to the dealership on Saturday. So Saturday came around, and this is long before cell phones. Mm. So I get home after a day doing whatever, and there are 54 messages on my voicemail.
Wow.
She really liked you.
I remember the blinking light. It was terrifying. And so I press play, and the first message is relatively normal. It's like, hey, I'm waiting for you to pick me up. It's noon. Looking forward to seeing you. Blah, 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 blah. Over the course of 54 messages, it was like I got to witness a character arc in real time. And she went from a mildly interesting person to a devastated, suicidal, crazy person to a rage-filled monster who threatened to kill me. I thought to myself as I was listening to this, and I'm sure I was white by the end of it. And I looked and I thought, can you imagine if I had slept with her?
And who says romance is dead, Dude.
So the punchline is that I did what any normal, red-blooded American boy would do, is we went on a second date.
Oh, wait, you're serious?
No, I'm not serious. Yeah.
great.
That's my bad first day.
Did you return the call?
Yeah, I gave her 108 messages back to double.
Nice.
I feel like I've been that person in the days before like cell phones and social media and whatnot, where you like thought you had a connection, and then you call that person and you're like, did they hear that message? Let me call them again. And the next thing you know, it's like 6 messages, and you're like, whoa, calm the fuck down.
Yeah,
Now you're crazy.
Like, how do you even get to, like, that's back in the day when they were tapes. It was an actual tape for, like, you had enough tape on your recorder to take on 54 relatively calm to completely psychotic messages.
I mean, to be fair, quite a few of those were beep.
So where's Annie Wilkes now?
In the other room.
We got married 23 years later. Here we are.
Shield Bell from the Sledgehammer, all that good.
My one last question though, like, did you know her zodiac sign? Was she a Virgo? Virgos are really big about punctuality.
You know what? Next time I'll ask.
You're gonna
Next time you should find out.
because it's the number one question you should ask.
Yeah, because that wasn't old in the 60s.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. Because even if you don't know anything about astrology, everyone you know does know everything about astrology collectively. So, like, you will be able to figure it out.
Speaking of which, what is everyone's sign, please?
Ooh.
Seriously?
Should we guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes.
Guess.
I'm gonna guess that Lisa is a water sign. Pisces, maybe?
Mm-mm.
No, okay, I'm totally wrong. Okay.
I'm a Scorpio Sag.
Okay.
So I'm not one. I'm like literally right on the cusp. I'm November 21st.
So am I.
On the cusp. You're not the same birthday.
Yeah, I'm not the same thing, but I'm on the cusp of 2 different signs.
Are you a Virgo?
Yes. Virgo Libra cusp.
Got it. Okay, guess everybody else because I'm not going to.
Okay. I'm going to guess that Jonathan is a Taurus or a Capricorn.
Oh, definitely.
You're definitely a Taurus.
Nice.
Got it.
I identify with bears, but bears are not zodiac signs.
I identify with bears in a very different way that you will find out when it gets time for my story.
My usual answer when somebody asks what my sign is, I'm like, like out to lunch, room to let, something like that. But
all right, so what do you think?
So Tone and Taylor are left. So Tone, I think maybe might be an Aquarius or an Aries.
Damn it. I don't believe a goddamn thing about this stuff, but I'm pissed off how accurate that is about my personality.
Holy crap. And then Taylor, maybe Leo? No, crap. Okay. I'm off.
Pisces.
Scorpio? Pisces. Oh, okay. I wasn't going to guess Pisces.
nice.
All right.
That's pretty good, though.
Yeah.
We got 2 out of 4.
Considering, that's a 1 in 12 chance each.
Yeah. True. That's pretty good.
Heck
Okay.
yeah.
So who's next, Mr. Tihi?
Who is next? Next up is Jonathan Maberry, and the prompt that Jonathan has is bugs or insects, which I have to confess is like one of my favorite story prompts because, like, a good bug story is going to make your skin crawl. So I'm excited.
Okay.
And Jonathan, your time starts now.
Okay, I will admit that this is going to have bugs in it, but it is mostly not a bug story. It's just bugs are an integral part of this. So I used to live in Pennsylvania, and I used to go camping in the Jersey Pine Barrens, which is this massive forest that is inhospitable to anything living or sane. It's a huge forest. And I used to go canoeing on these cedarwater rivers that they have there. And it used to be that you could go on like a two-day canoe trip. So you can camp out in these little sandy banks. And my plan had been to go camping in the Pine Barrens because I wanted to write a novel about the Jersey Devil, which is the state monster of New Jersey. And I wanted to kind of get in the mood. And part of the reason I wanted to do it alone is because I wanted to kind of get scared, and not much actually scares me. I'm 6'4". I'm a martial arts guy from like way back, former bodyguard. So I'm not really that scared of a lot. So I brought Salem's Lot with me by Stephen King, canoeing alone. And the first night, I pulled into the sandy bank, and it is completely black out there. I mean, there's a saying, there's a group of people called the Pineys, which were actually some kind of like rural hillbilly types in the Jersey Pines that intermarried with the Lenni Lenape Indians.
Yeah.
And they are not the most hospitable people in the world. And one of their sayings is, if you get lost in the Pine Barrens is lost indeed, God can't even find you, which is really encouraging when you're about to, and they tell you that as you're renting a canoe. It's like, great, thank you very much. And you are expecting the sort of banter. You're expecting, I mean, I have seen every slasher movie and serial killer movie, and I'm expecting that, I'm just paddling into the plot of this. Now, granted, I like my chances against a guy with a knife because I've been there, done that. But so here I am, I've got my Coleman lantern, which, being a city boy, you forget that it is basically an invitation for everything that flies and bites to just come to visit you. And in the Pine Barrens, like spraying off is like putting, tartar sauce on. They love it. I'm fucking delicious there. I mean, I'm surprised I did not actually get picked up and carried away and become the central, meat protein in a mosquito fest. But anyway, so there I am. I'm reading Salem's Lot. I've got my Coleman lantern on, and I'm starting to get a little, when you're out alone in a forest that big, you never, you start to appreciate how immense night can be. And it's friggin' huge. The lantern goes about so far that it hits the wall of the forest. There's no way to walk out of the Pine Barrens. The foliage is much too dense. There's quicksand, which I didn't know there was quicksand in New Jersey. Yes, there's quicksand in New Jersey. The reason I found this out, there was an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer years ago. They had excavated a quicksand pit and found 4 tax revenuers that had gone missing over the decades. It's not a joke. So,
quicksand is very on brand for New Jersey. I just have to interrupt.
And this is near Hamilton, it's Batstow area near Hamilton, which is where a lot of the Philadelphia Mafia people live. So it's at some point, everything that I'm encountering has probably considered ways to not only kill me but hide my body. So it's a very comforting moment. So I'm reading Salem's Lot, getting really good, and getting scared, in a nice, cool, funhouse sort of way. And I had also read all about the Jersey Devil, and I knew about that. And then suddenly I hear a scream in the woods, and I'm like, holy shit! It's a scream. So I have a little buck knife, hunting knife. I grab my knife and I go Captain Avengering into the woods looking for whoever's being murdered out there. And I'm looking around, and I'm going like real, like, very calm, and I'm hearing the scream. And every time I get closer, it moves somewhere else. And I'm like, oh shit. All right, I've just canoed into Blair Witch. This is fantastic. So much, that should have been in a brochure. And, finally the screams died down, and I went back to my camp, and I'm like, okay, that was weird. And then it starts again, and I go plunging into the woods again, and again the scream stops. And it's happened like 5 or 6 times. So now it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. my nerves are shot. And I'm sitting there with a knife in my hand by my Coleman lantern, like looking around like, you come at me, I'll kill you. I may die, but I was so terrified, right? And the screams kept off and on all night. I didn't get any sleep at all. I think I set record time getting from that camp spot back to, the place where they pick you up in the morning. I'm like, I finally get back there, and I am a mess, and I'm explaining this to a forest ranger, like, there's somebody out there being murdered, and I'm screaming. And he's like, and he's not reacting the right way. He's giving me like a, Finally, I finished my story, and I'm waiting for him to start calling in SWAT and, everything else. And he's like, so, I mean, you heard these screams, right? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. He says, and you heard them a lot, right? I said, yeah, and they were close to you and far away. Said, yeah. He says, you ever heard of a screaming tree frog? Which I have not. And I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, they're about this big. And it was probably on the tree next to you. So when you moved toward it, it stopped screaming, and another one started screaming, and you just followed a screaming tree frog that 5 of them could fit in a tablespoon. Screaming tree frog. And I had already front loaded this about how I'm a martial arts guy, and I was ready to and he's like, and you're going to pit your entire 6-foot bear-like frame against something that weighs 1/4 of an ounce. That's mighty brave of you. I mean, city boys people don't do that well in the forest. Proud of you. I nearly killed him because that would have been a satisfying resolution. Screaming tree frogs. So aside from 5 million insect bites and a tick, I found a tick too, which is always a lot of fun because if you go in the Jersey Pines and you don't come out with a tick, I think they tax you. So it was my last time I had ever canoed in the Jersey Pines. I'm not saying that that's the reason it was the last time, but it may be the reason that I went on to become a horror writer. Because prior to that, I hadn't really been interested in writing much in the way of horror, but I figured I kind of had to go through a cathartic moment where I took my inner fear and embarrassment, gave it to a lot of characters, and then let my readers deal with it. But screaming tree frogs.
I think the first thing I'll be doing once post this meeting is YouTubing screaming tree frogs.
Exactly.
Real thing. And it's really embarrassing if you get, punked by essentially an insect whose brain is the size of a pinhead. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I'm from New Jersey, and I can attest to basically everything he just said. And I have heard the screaming tree frog, and it is the first, if you're not already terrified, the first time you hear it, you are like, oh my God, someone's dying. And then it's like, I'm alone that's not a human being. So that's the part that I'm kind of like questioning you on. How did you not figure out that this was not a human
sounded
being?
Too loud to be anything but a person. I mean, I figured at most it was like a bobcat or something, but it was too feminine a sound. It sounded like a real person. And it sounded close. Like a bobcat wouldn't come close to me. They're not that sociable unless he was hungry and wanted a drink. But screaming tree frogs were not in my particular list of things I knew about.
I see.
Not a fan of screaming tree frogs.
You won't have one as a pet anytime soon.
No. And by the way, I just Googled it. That is a screaming tree frog.
Fabulous.
Screaming tree frog. Yep.
It's kind of cute.
Otherwise known as "you little fucking bastard," which is actually Latin name for screaming tree frog. So.
I was gonna say like a similar but totally crazy different experience in my own neighborhood here in Long Beach. Is 2 doors down from me is a autistic kid who screams a lot, but across the alley from me is a family that owns a parrot. So the parrot has learned to mimic the scream, and they just scream at each other. It happens like once a week, and it comes from all angles.
See,
And it
Wes
took me a
Anderson would put
year
that
and a half to figure out what was happening.
Yeah, the director Wes Anderson would put that in a film.
Oh,
I would.
Oh yeah.
I would never, but boy, I would watch it if he did.
Because once one of them gets going, the other will get going because they trigger each other. Like the parrot will start, and then the human will start, or the human will start, and then the parrot will start. But when they get going, oh my gosh.
Forget it.
I love my neighborhood. Anyway. Okay, so next up is Lisa, who's going to tell a story, and the prompt is family event / family reunion.
Okay, so for context, I actually grew up, it was me, my mom, and my dad in this huge old home in Camden, New Jersey, which at the time was like the most dangerous city in America, or one of them. And I was like 10 years old, 11 years old, and one of my favorite shows was Star Search, because I wanted to be like this big singer, although I can't sing very well. So I was watching Star Search, and they had this one episode where I think it was a family that came on and performed like the song that they had written. And I turned to my dad and I said, it would be so cool if I had like siblings and we could go on Star Search and perform. And he said, what do you mean if you had siblings? And I'm like, well, because I'm an only child. And he was like, no, you're not. So at that point, I'm like, 11 years old. I've never seen anybody else in the house around my age than Mom and maybe my best friend. And so I'm sitting there like, have you inhaled crack? Are you not my father? Are you like an evil twin? Like, what's going on here? So he then proceeds to explain to me how, don't you remember when you were 2 years old, I took you to California to meet your siblings. And I'm like, I was 2 years old. No, why would I remember that? So at that point, he decided, okay, meaning my father, he then called my siblings. Now, it turns out my father had been married before. And so I'm from the second marriage. And his first marriage was when he was much younger. So the sibling who was closest in age to me is actually, I think 15 years older than I am. So think about it. Like I'm 10, 11 years old. She's 15 years older. She's 25, 26. So she's already has a family and kids and all that. So I find out I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. And it becomes, I don't know why, my stepmother is, God bless her, one of the kindest, most generous people that you will have ever met. There's actually a corridor in the Orange County Airport named after her. Her name's Violet Smith. And so my father called her and said, Lisa does not remember any of you people, which of course really makes my heart sing. I'm sure it made her feel fabulous. And he's like, I want her to have a chance to come out and meet you. So she actually, because we had no money also, like Christmas was rare. I think most Thanksgivings were with other families in the neighborhood, like that kind of thing. So they actually pulled money among my siblings and my stepmother and got me on a flight to California that summer. And so I got to stay with, I stayed like 1 week with my one brother and 1 week with my one sister and 1 week with my other sister and a week with my stepmother. So basically the whole summer, my whole summer break, I got to spend with them. And so part of this was they decided to have a family reunion at my stepmother's house. And I remember being terrified because I thought, oh my, I don't know these people. Like I've never met them before. Like, how is this going to go down? And so I go and I put on my best like little kid outfit, right? I'm thinking I'm really styling here. I'm in California. I'm in Orange County. This is amazing. And I go out and I immediately realize that sarcasm is genetic. That's fine. And that basically everybody in my family, it was as if I had never, it's as if I grew up there, because immediately the one-liners and the multiple conversations and all that it was as if I was totally like I had been there like my whole life. I mean, I was 11, that's not that long of much time, but still. So it was an amazing family reunion. My next step was then to go visit. So my one brother lived in actually San Francisco, and he decided this had to be like the penultimate trip for me. So he went and cooked a gourmet dinner of Cornish hens. And so I'm this little kid. I'd never seen anything like that before. I think up until that point, turkey on Thanksgiving was, the preformed turkey breast. Yeah. Okay. It was that, right? So he makes this amazing dinner in this fabulous setting. And I come out and I immediately start bawling, because here is this little, what looks like used to be your pet chicken that has plucked and cooked in the oven. And I'm bawling, crying, and my poor brother is like, what's wrong? And I'm like, you killed Big Bird. Like, I'm freaking out. And I end up going and running to my room, and my and his wife, my sister-in-law, came in, and I think she gave me jelly donuts so that I had something to eat that night or something like that. So that was my big family reunion story. And actually every other year after that, they usually sent for me for about 2 weeks to come and spend time with my family. So.
Oh, that's so
It's a
sweet.
Hallmark movie. It's
yeah, that's sort of terrifying. That from me would be a Hallmark movie.
I know all these Hugo horror writers, but if I had the family story prompt, it would have been a very terrifying story. FYI.
Oh no, I have some. I thought I'd go down the let's be gentle route versus the oh my god and you're still alive route. So
yeah. I loved it though. It was so sweet.
Aww.
And in your defense, your dad didn't bring them up from 2 to 11.
Right.
It's so how would you remember? Had never come up
yet. Yeah, that's actually the
thought
weird
that would come up
part.
in conversation. I mean, just once in a while that would have come up in conversation, but that's odd that it didn't.
I think he probably referenced them by their first names. It wasn't your brother, blah, blah, blah. It's yeah, so Larry. And I'm all like, doo. I don't know what a Larry is. Go for it.
I was 18 when I found out that my Uncle Ernie was deaf, but I grew up my whole life with him. And I just thought he was rude. Because I would say things and he wouldn't respond. And I was like, Uncle Ernie's kind of a jerk.
What? No.
And they're like, no, he's deaf.
Wait, but no one told you this until you were 18? So
yeah.
Man, you got punked from 1 to 18.
In my family, it's once you hit adulthood, then everyone just starts saying what actually is going on, and then it changes everything.
Nice.
All right.
All right, it's your turn now.
Yeah.
It is my turn, and I have sex injury, which I did originally want to have this one, but I'm surprised that I
the injury or the story?
I think both.
The story. I did not choose this injury. So everybody else's story takes place at some point in the past. Mine takes place during the pandemic. Right before the pandemic, I found out that my boyfriend of 2.5 years, who I proposed to and who we were planning and saving up money to get married, cheated on me. And once I found that out, he immediately moved back to New York, which earlier in the pandemic was the epicenter of the pandemic, and good luck to them. You know, no ill will, maybe a little ill will. Anyway, so I spent the early part of the pandemic like really, really like heartbroken, sad, trying to work through everything. But then, you know, you get to that point where you bounce back and you're ready to get out and you're ready to mingle, but we're still in a stay-at-home order and we can't go anywhere. So Tinder had this amazing thing, Tinder Passport, where you could go anywhere in the world on Tinder. And I started hopping around to different countries, and I met this guy, I won't say his name. I met this guy, this very handsome guy who lived in Taiwan. And we had a very dramatic, amazing kind of like fling. And I did something that I like never have done actually in my whole life. And I am 36, but like in this pandemic, I have started to have video sex with people. I've had text message sex because I'm a millennial, and that's fine. But I used to be very proud of the fact that I've never really took a picture of my penis. I've never taken video of my penis, but then this pandemic happened. So like one of the things I guess about me and about this other guy is, you know, we were really hot and heavy, but because it's not physical, certain things aren't happening and certain things just continue to happen. So like I got really rubbed raw, and then this crazy thing happened. I heard a plop.
You heard a plop?
A plop from my penis. And a big circular thing.
I would like to give you another prompt at this point.
Yes, I'm not even done. A big circular thing happened around the situation. And
wait, circular which way?
Circular.
Okay, like a circumference kind of thing, not.
Yeah, like definitely a circumference. And it happened with the plop, right? The sound. And I was like, what the shit is that? And like, turn video off.
This is on video?
Yeah, this is on video. And this is in the middle of a pandemic. Oh, we lost Jonathan. Sorry, Jonathan. So it's in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm having like a medical emergency, I think, right? So I have to like call somebody eventually, and I'd like to be a pretty private person, but I had to call a like video Skype nurse, and they're like, you know, the next day, and they're like, what is your situation? What is your situation? And I describe it, and
okay, wait, right there. How much processing did happen right there when you decided how to tell her?
Oh yeah, I was like, so there's something that happened to my penis, and she was like sex with someone, and I was like, yes, but not physical sex, right? Because I was like, I'm not at risk of an STD. Like, I've been self-quarantining, like, it's not happening. So, but like the nurse is like, we have to see, because I was describing what was happening. I was also Googling a lot of like, because it's a very specific thing. And so I was Googling it a lot, and she was like, well, we're gonna have to see. And it was actually over Zoom. So over Zoom, unfortunately on my job's work account, you know, she's like, you have to drop trow and show us. And I was like, oh my God. And so I do, and it was new, so it was much bigger. But I was also Googling things, and together, me and the nurse found out that what happened is sclerosing lifigantitis, which is a sex injury that is painless, because this whole thing was painless, but comes from like pretty aggressive stimulation. What it is that it pops a kind of vein that becomes a cord-like structure that just like wraps around your thing, and it mostly only happens to people who are uncircumcised or who are circumcised, because the first thing they ask is, are you circumcised? Because then there's a whole host of other crazy diseases you can get if you are uncircumcised, and I am circumcised. So like most of that shit, like I went through WebMD and they're like, you have penis cancer. And I was like, no, I don't. And then they're like, you have this, this, and this. And I was like, but that only affects people who are like uncircumcised, and I'm circumcised. So like, this has to be something totally different. I found 3 different medical studies from the National Institute of Health on sclerosing lificantitis, which is, and everything they said is exactly what happened to me, which it pops up. It's painless.
Including the cybersex?
Yeah, because hilariously, which is so sweet, but like all 3 of these case studies involve men over 60 who have moved into long-term care facilities and had a great times and had something happen.
That's your peer group.
And had to go to the doctor. These are my people now. These are my people now.
I'm so glad we went first, because we're not story topping that one at all.
No.
And I may never walk again, right? I'm gonna limp out of here later on.
It's really weird. So like, yeah, I believe in not having stigmas around certain things, but like it was really difficult because like I also emotionally came to a really great place. And like my chosen fan brother who's Buddhist, and he's like very like big into everything, and he's like, you need to interview your injury. Like you need to interview your injury. You need to figure out what it is, what it's connected to, what it's blocking, so you can unblock it. So I had a conversation
with your penis.
I mean, it's
yeah,
connected to your pelvis.
yeah. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like this is the first time I ever sat down and actually decided to have a conversation with my penis. The first thing I said was, I'm sorry. And it seemed fine.
And what did your penis say in reply?
It's mostly silent.
It just
thank
hissed.
goodness.
It was pissed.
But I got to a point where I said something because I was talking to it, and I was like, I'm really sorry. I'm like, and I was like, I realized that I've mostly only been paying attention to how you make me feel versus what you are actually doing. And that was the trigger for me actually to get over this relationship and to get over being cheated on, because that is actually 100% true of what I thought about my ex, is that I mostly focused on how he made me feel and not what he was actually doing. And unfortunately, it took me being shorts around my ankles in my own bed, talking to my own penis to get to that point, but I got to that point. And everything has been better. Everything has not totally gone away, because this will spontaneously resolve anywhere from 5 weeks to like 3 months. And this is the pandemic. So this happened in late April, early May. So it's mostly gone. It broke the seal and allowed me to take pictures of my penis. And those pictures, you can't tell that I have this injury. However, I can tell every time I look at it. So I look forward to the day where I look like what I used to look like.
Listen, I'm so happy for both of you and that you have a relationship.
Yeah. Though, considering that this injury gave insight into your ex, does that mean that your ex is truly a dick? I mean,
Oh yeah.
If I'm following the chain of logic here, all right.
The laws of transference, my ex is a dick.
Yep. Wow. That. I feel like
Strangest episode of House I've ever heard.
The amount of people who I've had to platonically send pictures of my penis to, I've never sent a dick pic. I'm a feminist. Right?
Okay.
But I had to do it. I had to tell my family and my friends. Obviously not my family did I send pictures to, but a lot of my friends who were like, what does this look like? And I was like, oh crap. Okay, I'll show you.
Hopefully they read the email before they opened the attachment. I'm just saying.
You never know, man. You never know.
It's not email. His generation is like Snapchat or something.
Oh, okay. All right.
Not Snapchat. That's owned by the Chinese government. Signal all the way.
Well, what are they going to do with that?
Nice.
I don't know.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah, that was kind of amazing.
Personally, I'm grateful that I've become your acquaintance and friend post this whole situation.
Yeah, cheers to you healing.
The Tihi's penis.
It's almost back to normal.
Excellent. Well, I think with that, I think we're good. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I thought this was a blast. I hope we're going to do this once a month with different storytellers, unless these lovely gentlemen choose to come back.
Oh, I would definitely come back for this.
So join us next month. And I'm Lisa. This is Tihi. And we can't wait to have you join us in our Storytellers Happy Hour. Have a great one.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much for all of our
Bye.
storytellers putting up with all of us.
Guys, we'll see you.